Welcome back to the Training Babble Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Schell, and we are back with Matti Rowe, the gravel god. Matti, how's it going?
I want to say good to be here, but I'm just going to say I'm here.
Well, that's my fault for getting you fired up before we started recording. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have given you any heads up. So you just came off Unbound a couple weekends ago. How'd that go?
That's a stretch to say I came off of it. I traveled to it.
How's the rib, by the way?
Dude, I've never had anything like that. So I've had a good run. And I tell my brother, say, you're not a real bike racer until you've broken your collarbone. And I still
don't say that.
I still am not a real bike racer, but I did get a hairline fracture in my rib. So that sucks. And
you do have a fracture, so it's not just bruised.
It's a fracture. And it's just the biggest problem is just this, it's the sleep. It's kind of like overtraining syndrome. When you get overtrained, you have trouble sleeping. That's one of the tells. But with this, it's like I need to sleep, but I can't lie down.
Right.
And I'm one of those people who has to sleep I sleep on my side. I never sleep on my stomach or on my back. I sleep on my side. And I can't, because when I do that, your rib cage, or my rib cage at least, expands and then pulls and puts pressure on that area, and it's unbearable. So I just have to prop myself up in bed, and it's miserable going to sleep. I don't sleep as long. I wake up still in pain, but pissed off, and then I'm pissed off that I'm pissed off, and then it's just and it's all because I'm an idiot and I can't steer. And I hung out with a national esport champion who has trouble going in a straight line. It's that's the worst part. The worst part is when your life is impacted and it's your fault.
Yeah, that is true. I know there's been a lot of to do about this year's race, and people saying that essentially there's people who maybe haven't earned their way to the front of the field through experience and skill, but they have the power to be there. And so they it just kind of created an unsafe environment.
I don't know. That's nonsense. It sounds a lot like a bunch of lifetime Grand Prix whiners to me. all those stuck up idiots, they just want to gatekeep. They want to rotify it, which is directly against the spirit of gravel. Here's the solution. Get really fast and drop the posers right from the get-go, which is what people do anyway. It's not like the guy who crashed me out won. He literally isn't capable of winning, even though he's probably the strongest person in the field.
Yeah.
Because he can't steer. And until he can steer, he's not. So it's these things sort themselves out. And it's just racing is racing. There's always crashes.
Right.
Always, 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 always. It's a nightmare of crashes.
Yeah.
It's just part of the sport. So, no crying about it.
So any other takeaways from Unbound this year?
I have to say, so I have athletes who go and normally work a situation so that my colleague crews for them. But this time I only made it 5 miles in before I crashed. So I made it back in time to go with them to the aid stations. And as a coach, to actually be there for my athletes instead of selfishly do my own thing, it was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun at the second aid station in particular. I was crazy. I was on so much ibuprofen and acetaminophen and 5 Red Bulls. And I think I was even starting on a Miller, and people would come in and I'd be like, hey, what's up? And the athlete would be like, I haven't eaten for 2 hours. And then they're like, I'm going to quit. And I would just, if they said anything negative or anything about stopping, I just pretended I didn't hear it, and then I'd sit next to them and just be weird.
Yeah.
And feed them. I did this whole bit about have you heard about Jesus? And I'd try to get them to be creeped out by me and just want to leave the aid station because I was creeping them out. After putting shade over their head because it was brutally hot. And and the looks on their faces after they came across the line, because I had some guys hit some PRs for sure, but for other athletes it was first time, and I'm a big believer that the first time athletes just finish. It's impressive. It's impressive to ride 200 miles. Okay,
right.
It sucks driving that. So Give yourself some credit. I know the bar has been changed to 8.5 hour unbounds now, which is
what I tell my athletes all that, because exactly like you said, like if you've never done it before, just finishing is an accomplishment. But it's like it's hard to have goals. It's a very long day, lots of opportunities for things to go wrong. And it's like, I always tell the story that like for me, the first 4 hours flew by as perfect conditions. And I'm like doing the math. It's like, okay, at this rate, I'm finishing at this time. Right. And then after that point is like mud, mechanical, bonk. It's like that timeline just keeps getting pushed out and pushed out. Yeah. And it's like you just have to release expectations and be like, this is where I'm at now. This is what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to do the best in this moment.
Yes. And I've come up with a new controversial opinion. It's not crashes, but I don't think the elites actually do Unbound anymore. I do think they just do a slightly longer long ride. I think Unbound from a spiritual perspective is you're so destroyed that it's like your last leg just to get to the last aid station so that you can finally blessedly quit. And then there's a resurrection where either you or somebody else pushes your ass out the door and you do the last 50 miles just hobbling at negative zone 5.
Yeah.
And then you discover... So you learn something about yourself. You have these resources, this depth, this grit that you didn't think you had. Well, you know what? Like, I don't care. Those fast people, that's not how they feel. They're like, oh man, I'm so tired. I was holding like 140 grams per hour and only averaging 24 miles an hour. What an Unbound day I had. It's like, that's not Unbound. Like,
no, that's funny. I've got an athlete and I'm going to have him on the podcast soon. And like, he talks about that all the time, not necessarily exactly like you're saying, but he always says like what keeps him going is thinking about the athletes that are out there for 18 hours and 21 hours because they're like at their limit. And he's like, I want to give up. He's like, but I think about them. And I'm like, no way. Like if they can do it, I can do it.
If you want to give up and you're even like elite adjacent, like, come on, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was that.
Well, I want to say too, like I agree with you. I've gone up to crew for Leadville the last couple of years, and it's like it's such an amazing like to be at Twin Lakes, which is like a crazy like party, and to watch the people come through and to be able to like see your athletes in like before, after, like it's just such a much better experience, and it really kind of brings the joy back into coaching and the passion for it, you know?
Yeah.
So need to find more ways to do that, I think.
Unfortunately, the path to fulfillment isn't through me or you. It's through others. I hate it when Buddhist truths surface and prove to be true.
So today we are going to talk about, speaking of truth, things that we wish more athletes knew and or would embrace. And we've talked about this, I think, like it comes up in almost every time we talk. Something comes up. And I was just out today thinking about it, and there's an athlete right now that I'm kind of like banging my head against the wall because it's like things that drive his decisions are much more metric based and stuff like that. And so I guess the first one I want to talk about is like this idea that the blue line, your CTL, is your fitness, and that it should always go up until race day.
Right.
It should never go down. Never let your CTL go down, because then your fitness has decreased.
Oh man, this is playing the oldies to the hits. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go first real quick, but like just definitionally, like CTL is tied to your threshold. So as you get fitter, like, not that I totally agree with the statement, but let's say we're measuring fitness progression with threshold. Your threshold goes up, you're going to accumulate like less, or that like you're trying to equilibrate your threshold. So as you're accumulating TSS, it reflects your actual ability. So as your ability goes up, unless your overall training load goes up, like it can obscure that line. Like you might have 100 CTL. In actual performance, that's different. Even if I have 100 CTL, which is different from Pogačar's 100 CTL, like it's obscuring. It's a relative amount.
To yourself.
Right, to yourself. So, but as like obvious as that should be, that is a common thing that athletes are like, man, my training load isn't going up. Am I even getting fitter? I want to break 70 CTL, 80 CTL, 90 CTL or whatever. And it's like, well, you actually are, like your FTP went up 20 watts this year. Like,
Yeah.
you're a lot fitter.
Well, yeah, and I think we've talked about it before, where it's like I think of it as like your depth of fitness or your foundation of fitness. It's or of training load. It's in the name, chronic training load, long-term training load. How much have you been training over the last 6 weeks? And so, if it's higher, then you can handle more training load. If it's lower, you can handle less training load. So it's really just about your ability to handle load. And I think the other thing, like you just said, it's relative to everybody else, but like it is tied to threshold. And it's like, so if your threshold's wrong, up or down or whatever, constantly changing day by day, then it's like it's not this thing that's set in stone. And I think the other thing that people don't realize is it's much more tied to duration than it is to intensity. And so it's like you can very easily ask somebody, okay, how many hours do you have to train each week? And they say 10. And it's like, okay, then you're going to do 500 TSS a week divided by 7. This is what your CTL is probably going to end up after 6 weeks, right? And so everybody's going to hit a ceiling at some point unless you have unlimited time to train, and nobody does. Even the pros are like maxing out at like 30 hours.
Yeah, but I think there's a deeper problem here, which is just conflating like the fitness you have with the performance you're going to have in a race, which is a totally different skill set. And also, I think it comes from this weird need we have in modern life to simplify everything into a metric that's sort of like, it makes you feel like if you just get that metric in a certain place, that it will like solve everything downstream of it. And it's just not true. Like, first of all, like racing and training are not the same thing. They're literally inverse. Like in a race, you're trying to use as little energy as possible to go as fast as possible. And in training, you're trying to like use your like as much energy as possible in a way that stresses the right system in the right time. So they're inverse.
So so that's a great segue into a next one. And I think you kind of alluded to this before we started recording, is contrary to popular belief and what Zwift and Strava would have you think, the goal of training is not to swing for the fences every day.
Yeah.
To get a PR, to hit a higher power number, to go faster. It's like it shouldn't happen every day.
Almost, like, honestly, in my opinion, almost never. Like I call that looking for answers. It's funny because before Unbound, the speech I gave to my athletes was, hey, you know how I say don't look for answers? Well, tomorrow you're going to look for them.
Yeah.
But in normal training, it's just not, because it's this thing, okay? There's this concept in physics and in lots of other parts of life that when you measure, the act of measuring something changes the thing that you're measuring. And that's exactly what happens in training. If you're always trying to figure out where you are, by trying to figure out where you are, you're actually affecting where you are. And mostly it's making you worse because you're getting so tired doing those maximal like nut efforts where you're just exhausted after, and then all of a sudden your ability to like do quality work or like progress along a certain area, whether it's in a workout or general workload, goes down because your recovery goes up. And crucially, not as captured in metrics, just mentally, like,
yeah,
the mental thing is huge. And this is a huge detriment that I see in those people who want, maybe the person you're working with, who wants to like maximize metrics and like looking for answers, and they go into a race and it's like, well, on paper today, like I look good, but in reality, I'm just, what do they say in The Hobbit? Too little butter spread over a big piece of bread. Like you've got nothing. Like you're hollow. Like maybe your CTL is 100, but your TSB is whatever, plus 10. So in theory, you should be going okay, but you're just dead. Like you're a husk already, and you need extra bandwidth when you're racing.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's like the mental component isn't captured in a lot of things. And I talk to athletes about that. Like if I were, so going back to this whole CTL thing, is like, if I had an athlete doing an event and it was, let's say they were doing Unbound for the first time, And then all of a sudden they had a lot of disruptions to training and stuff like that. And they weren't like, their CTL wasn't, then it's like them, I might be a bit concerned. And I might say like, maybe we drop down this year. Now, if I have somebody that's doing it their second or third year and it's disruptive and stuff like that, I might be less concerned because it's like, you know what you're in for. You know what it takes mentally to get through this. And so you're at an advantage. You have that experience to pull from versus somebody who's never been there before. It's a big task to tackle something like that.
Yeah, man, I love that too. Like mental reference points matter, which is why I think, and this is a little controversial, but I do think sometimes it is important. I don't know if you can go through your entire athlete journey arc from beginner to burned out to like embracing your legacy as you teach it to your grandkids. I don't know, whatever the end of the arc is. I'm not there yet. But whatever that is, I do think is important sometimes to swing for the fences. Like have your unbound, like overtrain, like just do stupid shit so you know where your limits are a little bit and you have a feeling for that. Because I think unless, you're like have other problems you need to work out elsewhere, it's just good to be like, okay, I know what this is. This is where I'm at. This is good context. Right. I'm in an okay place.
Yeah. Like I call that bracketing, right? You need to know those extremes.
Yeah.
So that you can operate in the middle. And if you've never gone too far, you don't know kind of where that line is. And so you do have to experience it every now and then.
Yes.
So the next thing I think we could talk about, I think this is something you're big on, is I would say under recovery. Like, so it's the opposite side of the chasing the CTL thing, right? Where it's like, because you always want it to go up, you don't think you shouldn't take recovery weeks. It just makes me crazy how people just don't understand the value or appreciate the value of rest and recovery.
Yeah, it's understandable. Just because there's incentives built into like having a good workload, like on Strava, like in Training Peaks, like satisfying metrics. But I also think there's this thing I've touched on before versus like probably like top level periodization. Like when you're building your base, you're basically just like getting good at burning a lot of calories.
Yeah.
And in there, you can like push workload at that intensity without getting burned so bad or like having huge consequences. And that's fine. But this sort of gets to the notion of like, it's very possible to be strong, but not fast. And strong to me just means like you are that person who can like diesel for 8 hours and burn an absurd amount of calories and come back and do it the next day. And it's like, well, that's really neat. Like you're a tank. But as far as like fast, that's when you have to stop trying to do a lot of work and start trying to do a lot of work, or start trying to do work fast. Yeah. And those are in tension with each other. It's like the essence of periodization. You can't like work on every system all the time simultaneously. You see this in the gym as well, like with different phases. Like at first you're trying to adapt and you're going to get really sore. And then you try to add some more weight and like get a little hypertrophy. Make sure your muscles are recruiting like maximally for each position, and then maybe getting a little bigger in size. But when you're doing max strength, which is like fast and recruiting as many fibers at once, like that's very different than doing like a lighter weight, but like fast contractions. You just can't do them all. So I think that's a huge thing that's in people's, that maybe they don't recognize, that holds them back. It's like early season when you see people piling miles on, like maybe that's okay. But in race season, the biggest struggle I have is, hey, you need to, especially like this next stretch in Colorado, for example, there's so many gravel races every weekend. I have one athlete who's got like literally 6 gravel weekends back to back to back to back to back. And it's like, bruh, like you don't need to be doing, we can't do a lot of stuff in the week. Like maybe like you're basically trying to recover and then race again.
Well, and that's just it, right? It's like, so I ran into that a lot with cyclocross, where people are racing twice a weekend. And it's like you end up in this race recovery cycle. And it's like you're coming off a race and then you're racing again. And it's like, so there's not a lot of time to train in between. And so like, as you started talking about that, like what pops into my head is I had so many people come off of Unbound. We're like the next, I'm ready, let's go. What work should, it's like, just like take a couple of weeks and just like you're not recovered. As much as you think you are, you're not recovered.
Especially that one. That one is, yeah.
No, it takes like weeks.
It's like a mental bloodbath.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah. So it's just like I get it. Like I appreciate the enthusiasm and the wanting to get, like, keep training and stuff. But it's like, yeah, you also have to like keep in mind that your body needs to like recover. And like it's an old way of thinking, but just like if you've got like blisters and stuff like that, if you've got blisters on your feet and they're not healed yet, then you're probably not healed internally either, you know?
I know my road rash has just started to
exactly.
finally clear off.
Exactly. So what are some of the things that you have that you wish athletes would embrace more?
Their weight where it is. Yeah. God, it's just, I do feel like I'm stuck in some sort of like hellish, like simulation sometimes. Cause I've never met anybody who's like satisfied with a threshold test, but I've also never met an athlete who's like, you know what? I don't need to lose 5 pounds. Like, I'm fine. I'm not going to sit around here and like take napkin math and like fantasize about how I could maybe keep up with Vingegaard at the Tour if I just lost like 45 pounds.
Well, I would take that a step further, and we'll come back to that. But I think even like the bike weight, right? The money people throw at their bike trying to lose a few grams and stuff like that. And it's like, if you use Best Bike Split, you'll see that like a lot of times it just doesn't make that big of a difference.
Yeah, totally. But that's understandable. I mean, if people have a lot of money and want to buy a speedboat, or they want to buy like drop a few grams, like knock yourself out. But where it pisses me off as a coach is this constant grinding. Like, you're trying to lose 5 pounds.
But then you're doing it when your training load's the highest. It's like,
right. Yeah.
It's that panic training or whatever, where it's like 8 weeks before the race, and all of a sudden, I need to lose 5 pounds, so I'm going to stop eating just as my training load's going up.
Yeah. One thing that was cool when I was coming up in the road scene in Colorado was there's this guy named George Simpson who became like, I think he was maybe he never won like nationals on TT but he was pretty close, like podium pro nationals TT cyclist. And he was pretty big, like 180, like maybe 6 feet, but like huge engine, like trained super right. He didn't look like a cyclist, but he also never seemed to really like buy into this. Like, he just embraced what he was. He was like, I'm a bigger guy, but my threshold is 400 watts in Colorado. And I can get so aero, and I can train so well. And that was what it was. And like, he's retired now, but he had a hell of a career and like did some pretty amazing things. And I think just from a personal standpoint, like looking back on time, I'm never going to get back. Like, I don't know how much I ever won, like getting, especially like gnawing after those last 5 pounds. And I know so many athletes have just entered this cycle of like trying to lose weight, like always tired, shitty training, super hungry all the time, like emotionally compensate after a bad ride, like overeat. Oh my God, I haven't lost any weight. They just do this like hell cycle. And it really is the case. It's one of those things, like investing, where you just have to stop trying to like buy crypto. You just have to like eat to support your training and recovery. And then beyond that, if you're going to eliminate something, there's probably stuff you're doing that has nothing to do with starving on the bike that will move that 5 pound needle for you, maybe. But it's never like, you're doing fasted riding. It's more like, no, like let's look at the Trader Joe's bag, Matti, that you destroyed like while watching Netflix, after 4 Millers, back in 2017. Like, that's what was holding me back. Like, not having gels during my VO2 max intervals. Yeah. But people miss that.
Right. Well, and I think it's been shown time and time again that it's like, if you do undereat on the bike, you make up for it later in the day, or overcompensate later on the day. But it just seems like, but if you look at it, like it's such a drop in the bucket, like, okay, you skipped 300 calories or 800 calories on the bike, but then you ate 1,600 throughout the day, like trying to make up for that. And so you're much better just like fueling the work during the session so that you're not overeating afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not as emotionally satisfying. Like when you feel like you're hungry, you feel like you're moving closer to your goal. But the irony is you're doing the opposite.
Oh God, I just heard Nate. I could totally hear Nate. Less weight, more power.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should be hungry. You should always be hungry.
Yeah.
Fizzy water and sleeping pills.
Yeah. Well, we can't all be Nate, can we?
What else you got?
You're never going to be as perfectly prepared as you want to be to race. Just race. Just like there's a time to prepare and there's a time to race. And like I'm speaking to myself a lot in some of these, but I'm also talking. It's my observation in a lot of athletes. It's, hey, why did you not, like, they'll even have it on the calendar, maybe even registered, and they just like don't show. They're like, oh, something came up, but it's like, did it, or were you just like you didn't want to do it because you thought because your last workout didn't go so well, you're just 5 pounds away, or didn't, like, come on, like you have to stop overthinking it. Like I've learned a lot from riding with Rio guys, but some of my favorite characters, his name was Chaz, and Chaz didn't give a fuck. Chaz would never overthink any racing. He had one mode. He would go into the race and he would just ball. He would literally say that. He's like, I'm just going to go dummy hard. I'm going to go full retard, and I'm just going to like do as good as I can. And that was like, of the suggestions you can give an athlete, it's like, stop overthinking it. You're never going to be as fit or as light as you want to be, probably. So just show up and then just stop thinking too much. Like, you will learn a lot just by doing. You, like, there's no amount that I can tell you before, or you could do some things, yes, but when the adrenaline's pumping and there's chaos, and like, that's just part of the experience. It's part of racing. But that comes down to, again, this is different than CTL or TSS or just like chasing metrics. This is how to actually race fast. Is you just have to jump in the arena a lot.
Right. Yeah. And I think that goes back to us talking about finding that line, right? It's like if you're constantly looking at your power meter and thinking, like, I think there's such a case for racing blind or even training blind sometimes. And what I mean by that is, like, get the power and heart rate off of your computer. Like, fine if you want to have distance and time, like, that's helpful. But like, you become much more in tune with your body versus like looking down and seeing a wattage and being like, oh, nope, can't do that. And it just like gets in your head. But like, if you just go out there and it's like, I'm going to take whatever my body gives me today, you're going to learn a lot more about yourself than letting the computer dictate what you can and can't do.
It's a very scary thought for myself and for a lot of people. But there are workouts for that. I just say, hey, and this is a Howdy Shellism, but just like take some tape, put it over your computer, put it in your back pocket.
For sure. It's like I tell people all the time, it's like, it's for me, it's not for you, right? It's like, it helps our communication so that, like, I want to look at it afterwards, but you don't need to be staring at it in the moment.
Yes.
And I also just want to say too, like, we've talked about this before, where it's like, I can't remember the podcast we talked about, but a lot of suffering comes when expectations don't meet reality.
Yeah.
And so, like, going into a race more like mind like water and just being able to be adaptable versus something happens and you're like, nope, this isn't part of my plan. I didn't plan on losing 5 minutes because my chain dropped or what have you. Right. And that starts screwing your day. You just have to, like, be there and just, like, adapt and be flexible and reactive. You can plan as best as you can to mitigate risk. But once you're there, you have to be adaptable and handle what's thrown at you.
Yeah, I think it's almost good as part of your pre-race routine to just imagine that something stupid is going to happen, probably.
I tell athletes, like, the week leading up to a race, when you're laying down to fall asleep and stuff, visualizing getting a flat, dropping a chain, like having to do things and like visualizing doing it very calmly so that once it happens, if it happens, you've already practiced it 10 times, you know, and then you're not surprised by it. You're like, oh yeah, that's how I do this.
Yeah, like the default assumption shouldn't be that like God wants everything to happen in your favor. Like most of the time it should be that maybe he'll be okay with you having a good day, but you're gonna have to you're gonna have to jump through some hoops.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would say my next one, and we've talked about this before, is fitness, progression, improvement is not linear. As much as we want it to be,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes it's like it plateaus for a while, and then all of a sudden you like have a big jump. And it's like consistency over time is the biggest thing that I've seen lead to improvement.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different domains. I have this whole sheet. I mean, normally you think about rider ability and you think about like just the classic physical stuff, but actually you might have some latent measurable fitness improvement going on that you can't unlock until you get better at nutrition. For example, all the buzz about durability. You might actually be, by virtue of a higher CTL, like be able to put out more power after doing a lot of work than you can imagine, but only until you get to the point where you can actually sort of get close to maxing out your carb intake. So until you do that, you're not going to be able to see the other thing.
Right. Yeah, and I think that goes back to hyper optimization. Is everybody like trying to focus on these little things all the time without addressing the big things?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not sexy.
Like sleep, right? Like sleep and eating enough on the bike and taking care of your equipment, which you're guilty of.
Yes, very guilty. Yes. I try, but it's ceaseless.
Yeah. So I'll let you take the last one. What's the last thing you wish more athletes would embrace?
I wish more well, it's two things. I'm going to try to smuggle them through quickly. I wish more athletes would comment or have some sort of journalistic dialogue with their own training for two reasons. One, it makes my job easier, and that's all I really care about. Who cares what you do? Just kidding. The real first reason is the observant effect, meaning when you know you're going to have to report on something, it affects what you do. So if you, for example, I like my athletes to comment in a very specific way: readiness, nutrition, workout execution, and miscellaneous. And just the first three, like actually the first three would probably be just fine. But if they have to come in on readiness, so like, hey, I was 5 out of 10 today because I stayed up late, whatever, chasing singles around town, even though I'm married. Like that tells you that you have some work you can do there.
Yeah. And
you would have shown up better for your workout. Now, if you're a coach and you're just looking at that without that context, you wouldn't know. You'd be like, looks like you had a bad day. It's like, no, that bad day wasn't just a bad day. That was a choice.
Yeah.
The nutrition. Yeah. The nutrition as well. Like, are you supporting your workout at all? Or are you just going in YOLO? That makes a huge difference. And then
I just want to comment on that one real quick. Like it amazes me how many athletes don't practice in training what they plan to do in a race. And so it's like that in training, they're always eating one thing, drinking one thing, and then all of a sudden they get to a race and it's like, oh, I'm going to do 200 grams of carbs per hour today with a mix of these things and a burrito every 30 minutes. And I'm like, why would that work?
Yeah. Well, it worked in their head.
Yeah. So, sorry to interrupt there.
No. But so it'll improve. Like if you have to report on it, it's going to improve the quality of that. And I also think it improves compliance overall. Like the real magic people are looking for, the cliche is the magic you're looking for is in the work you're not doing. But I actually would amend that and just say it's just like, just showing up consistently is the hardest thing. Like I see it with athlete comments, people look me in the eye and tell me, oh yeah, I can do this comment format consistently. Yeah, maybe for a month, maybe for 2 months, but 4 months in. And then you might be like, Matti, your process is too intense. It's like, is it? Like all you're doing is telling me what you did and it's for you.
Yeah.
So that's that one. The other one is get a goddamn hobby beyond your hobby. I think what I've noticed is the best performing athletes have other things going from them in their life, so they don't over index on racing. People that don't have any other things going on in their life, whether it's like a degree they're pursuing or a vocation they care about or a person or an animal, or like if you're just sitting in your closet, like measuring your food, like thinking about your next race, how you're going to rough up the local medium course, whatever gravel fondo and beat your PR by 20 seconds, you become miserable. You do. And you perform worse. You overthink it. You just perform worse than you would if you had other things to even yourself out. And this isn't always apparent to people, but I think it can happen gradually, gradually over a couple of years. Like start feeling some progress of feeling good. They get more invested in the sport, but there's a point at which that investment goes from like healthy and like pretty clean. And I think this also, of course, this probably interplays with what you said earlier about the linearity of like fitness improvement. Well, there's this diminished returns thing happens where, you get to 90% of how fast you could be realistically. And then you start searching for those marginal gains, but then you actually could get worse, not because you're not putting in the right inputs, but because you're totally overthinking it.
Yeah. Well, and just to kind of add on to that one or finish up with that one is like, I've seen, and I don't know what the answer to it is or what the solution is to it, but it's like, I've seen typically when athletes, you have your A race, right? And whether it's a nationals or qualification or something like that, and you put so much stock in it and you're so worked up and there's so much pressure on you. And that's usually when things go to shit. But then it's these other races where they were busy doing other things. They like maybe training wasn't going great and they're just like entering into it like, oh, we'll just see what happens. And it's like, they're much more likely to get into that flow state and have a really good race because the pressure is not there. And so it's like, yeah, trying to find that balance between focus, but not over focus.
Yeah, I see a lot, a lot of, it's June now, so a lot of A races have passed, but that reminds me of something I always tell people, which is that your goals are going to disappoint you. So like it's good to have, it really is good to have an aim. And I admire people that do. And I think sometimes if you achieve your goals, yes, it could potentially change your life, but it probably won't. I don't think any goal you achieve is ever going to permanently change how you feel. And I think like underneath it all, that's what people are really going for. And it won't. Like, even if you want Unbound, like people might want to sleep with you, people might want to sponsor you, people like, oh, that is there. But if you went into it and thought you weren't enough until you did that, you're at some point that is going to resurface again.
Yeah, I think that's a very true thing. I mean, there's the post-race blues are a very real thing. And yeah, if you're doing this trying to avoid something else, it's gonna it's never enough. I mean, you hear about it with Olympians that like go and win a gold medal and then they're depressed afterwards because
gold medal,
like, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
And
ultimately you might ask, and then you might respond to that and say, well, what's the point of doing it anyway? Well, I think cycling just happens to be a framework that lends itself to your best life, just because like life really is about striving towards stuff.
Yeah.
And it like just that general spirit, it doesn't have to be cycling. It could be running or God forbid snowshoeing. It could be other things.
Right.
But yeah, like it's good for you. And so sometimes when athletes come and they're like, I don't know what my big goal should be. It's like, well, every year it should be to challenge yourself. So what's going to challenge you?
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah. I like that. So what are your parting words for athletes?
My parting words for athletes. Jeez. The magic you're looking for is in the comments you're not writing down.
All right. And I think mine would be keep it simple. Like it just really doesn't have to be that complicated. And it's usually the small, seemingly easy things that are going to lead to the biggest impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
GravelGodCycling.com and GravelGod on Instagram.
Awesome. You can reach me at kaizenendurance.coach or at kaizenendurance on Instagram. Thanks for listening, and until next time.